And recording.
So thank the hearty few who've shown up to hear what I think will be a very interesting talk tonight. Gift of the Sun, Heliodor, one of the most beautiful varieties of beryl. And our guest, Peter Berg, has visited and dug Heliodor on most continents, has collected the most famous localities. And I must say his middle name must be Persistence, because some of these localities took a decade or more to get permission to just collect that. So that's something that not many people share these days. He's the only person that we know of that has both mined and studied these major deposits up to several dozen times these past 35 years. So he's very experienced in these areas, such as the Urals, the Volyn, Siberia, Minas Gerais, Carolina, etc., etc. We're privileged today to hear his only and first presentation on only one color of beryl. He's usually far more prolific in the subject. So we're going to have a more concentrated a bit of information today. He has followed his passion, and since he was only a young boy, but in this time his studies has involved many different types of localities, including alpine cleft, minor and major mineral sources. So he brings many decades of learning to the table tonight and should be appreciated for the true expert that he is. So I'd like you to welcome Peter Lyckberg, our gift from Sweden. It's
Thank
all
you very
yours,
much for the
Peter.
introduction, Ray. Yes. So I will not switch on my camera now. I can do that later because it would interfere with the PowerPoint, if that's all right. You will see me after a few images and some photo from the mine. So I will give you introduction to yellow-green beryl. And also the naming was about a century ago from beryl crystals they were labeled as from near Rössing in Namibia, yellowish green. I've not seen really golden. And then we have golden beryl also. And I will come into this a little bit later. But I will start with a few deposits, and I will talk about a few minor deposits, and of course, the world's major deposits. And we'll look a bit into the reason for the colors in beryls as well. Oops, let's see now. Just now I have to find. Okay, so I will do very quickly about the origin of the planet Earth, the Big Bang 14 billion years ago. And those are some beautiful images. And why I want to do that is just to come to the forming of 92 natural occurring elements. And our planet is really unique as it has both the core, the mantle, and the crust, and the 92 different elements. And we are looking, of course, for aluminium, beryllium, aluminium, silicate, and so on. But beryllium is the critical one, element number 4, one of the smallest ones. And of course, the planet is unique as we have the plate tectonics, we have collision, subduction, we have an ocean, we have an atmosphere and the hydrosphere and water and we have also a biosphere. So with the time, the first beryllium minerals were emeralds 2.95 billion years ago, the oldest that we have recorded in South Africa. And here's just to show why it's so. Other planets have 50 to maybe 100, 120 different mineral species, and we have 6,500. Beryl is one, and the beryl group has several other members, and we'll just concentrate on one type. So, of course, if the magma reaches the surface, we can have beryl formation also from gases like in the Wawa Mountains, the red beryl, manganese, and so on. Here is a picture showing the granite, so crystallization of granite, typical in the collision zone, but it could also be formed by stretching of the earth crust and underplating and so on. So you can see to the left the fine crystallized granite with the larger grains of the same minerals in the pegmatite vein, and to the right you see a pegmatite vein with a cavity where the grass is growing. So I had one conference one time, I was talking about one pegmatite, and one in the audience who had been living near this raised his hand. Well, there are no cavities in this. You mean the frozen crystal? I said, no. And why he hadn't discovered was because there were bushes and trees growing in every cavity. So, of course, granitic pegmatites, they can be a bit different composition, and we call it granite, but in fact, the mother rock can be quite different. Here you see a zonation of the granitic pegmatite. I will not delve too much because we're going to the specific variety of beryl. It's only to show the pegmatites to the left are very irregular. To the right is bulging. It means that the country rock has been quite warm and plastic. Here is in the same pegmatite you saw to the right, a large beryl crystal, yellow, non-transparent. This pegmatite in the city of Gothenburg, it's one of the nicest pegmatites located in a major city of 700,000 people. And that's my home pegmatite, just about a mile from my house. Here is from Eveland, Norway. You can see I marked the beryl, topaz, amazonite, garnet, allanite, albite, and so on. So here in those frozen pegmatites, you can find gem quality as small sectors. And in Eveland Evia, there was the largest, very nicely colored Heliodor was a meter tall. And it had, you could cut stones 15, 20 carats from those pure section. Very, very strong color. I will show you one specimen you can see here. To the left, that's just to show the color of the Iblandavia. And to the right is my first paper in the 4th grade in school about the Högsbo pegmatite. I just happened to find it here on the countryside. It's just to show the structure of the pegmatite. Now, this one is amazonite and also lithium-carrying pegmatite, so there are only morganites. Here is from Namibia, and to the left you can see the vertical fractures. The pegmatites have going more towards hydrothermal vents. And there are also bigger pegmatites here with topaz and beryl. And this is not Spitzkoppe, not far from Brössing original locality. During the evolution, you see the first beryllium mineralization Gravlut, South Africa. And those are the different sequences where there were numerous pegmatite fields formed. So they have been during the Earth development in sequences. And we'll speak about Volhynian, New Karelian, Ukraine. They're 1.8, 1.7 billion years old. And to younger Brazilian and Ural and Scandinavian ones. Now, this is just to look at the half-life of thorium, uranium, isotopes, and potassium-40. So one thing that radioactivity does, it is in fact change the valence of the iron, so knocks off an electron. So with time in very, very young pegmatites, depending on what is the cause of the color, if it is only that and in which position the iron is sitting also, so it's less likely to have strong or nicely colored Heliod in very young pegmatites. That's what I want to show you. And here's just the half-lives. And here are some, so which areas it should be have Helidor and why, because they're young. So I will mark that a bit. Here is in to the left in Portugal, and to the right in Pakistan. Portugal is older, and there are some Helidors in cavities. And in Pakistan, I would not suspect much of Helidor at all. Maybe in 100 million years of time or 200 million years time. Now, when we come to looking at the spectrum, here is a Goshenite. And we look at the wavelength. So you can see in the graph, there's perpendicular to the c-axis, the length axis of the crystal, hexagonal crystals, or parallel, depending on the two different graphs. And here is a golden beryl. Now also this golden beryl and Heliodor, we will look at some different crystals. And if you look at the spectrum, so this is the visible spectrum for the human eye. You can see where it is marked. And there's also perpendicular or parallel to the c-axis. Here is the typical Heliodor from Volodarsk. And you can see, depending on direction, the different colors. And you can see that on the spectrum also. Green beryl here from Mondsteiner. You can see the different colors also, depending on direction. And that's also, if we have a beryl aquamarine Helidor crystal, you can often see that if you look through the length, through the z-axis, is another color than through the crystal, the side. And here is also two beryls green aquamarine, and this could be ISO. Sometimes in the same deposit, as you will see, even in the same pocket, you may have aquamarine, green beryl, green yellow Helidor, pure yellow Helidor, and going to strong, if we should call that golden beryl, and even to orange brown. And I will show you in the end a photo of specimen from the same pocket. And here's green beryl aquamarine, depending on the direction. Now, what we can do also is the heat treatment of iron-bearing beryl. So we can heat it, you see, before heating and after heating. If you have, for instance, a light-colored Helidor, you can lose the color. If it's another type, you can get the blue, as you hear. You see the yellow-green, and you can heat it, and you can get the blue color. And that could be even from the same deposit. So it's you have to study very well. You don't want to lose the color of some. And here is the iron bearing also heat treatment. So before yellow and losing the color completely. So you're shifting in or out of the visible spectrum. And here's another of before heating yellow and after heating, before heating and after heating. So you can also do radiation. And here is before and after heating, the different wavelengths. And if you hit very lightly colored aquamarine, almost Goshenite from Pakistan, you can make them beautiful golden beryl or Heliodor by irradiation. So you push it into the visible spectrum, that color. Now we'll go to some different deposits. We will start in the Ural Mountains. It took me since I was a small boy until 1992 until I went there. But I tried to go to every place with major deposits. I've been to the Urals, many different deposits in Urals. Novosibirsk, there's a granite core. I've been to the Altai, on the Russian side, on Kazakhstan side, on Mongolian side. I haven't been to the Chinese side. But the Chinese have found about 100,000, or I should say, they have documented about 100,000 pegmatites only on their side the last few years. And I do have one Helidor from the Chinese side. And you see Shelava Grace and Adon Chilon are pegmatites. They're very next to each other. And we'll come to Karelia beryl mine in Finland and Volodyansk in Ukraine. So this is just a cross-section of the Urals stretching north-south from their Hercynian, about 300 million years old. There was also amethyst and a lot of quartz veins, hydrothermal, 212 million years ago. But what is here is if you go from west to east, you have from platinum deposits to topaz, Helidor, aquamarine, tourmaline deposit to emerald deposits. So west to east, you don't need to go many tens of kilometers and you have almost everything you could wish for. That's really, really interesting, but it took me so long to get permission to go there in 1992, finally. So it's an old picture from Europe. That's about what we knew. I came there this second time, January 93. So my wife, she don't like me to go to all this, not to Afghanistan, not to Pakistan anymore. I was in Tajikistan without she even knowing it because I was in Urals. I went to Tajikistan and I gave a talk. And she came and listened to the talk. I gave online. And she asked me, when were you in Tajikistan? She was not even aware of it. So I'll try to keep her updated on my travels in the future. So here are some Ural gems. And you see the Helidor on the top, and you see the cut one in the ring that my wife designed in the middle. Is like the absolutely best quality, and the nicest color of specimens is in the Urals, and very few cut stones. I'll show you a couple of more in the further on here, and you can see the others, germalines and one golden beryl laying down, an emerald and aquamarine and topaz to the very left, imperial topaz. So this is just showing all the yellow veins are with Heliodors and the purple are with amethyst. And they're also Makrusha, the blue mark that's full of blue topaz. Those were mined primarily from 1668 till the Russian Revolution, and then they mined a few later on. And here are just details of the pegmatite fields. So the granite is marked with the stars, and the blue are the pegmatite veins, and they're dipping steeply down. And this is my first visit to the mine. This is underground to the left. And here is a cross section. Yellow means they found beryls in the pocket. 1, 2, 3 crystals typically, sometimes a handful. And some are green there, it means beryl and topaz. Some are blue, although it's not as visible to the left, only topaz. Pockets are generally very small, and the largest pockets, up to 4 meters to the left, had no beryl or topaz. Here's mining, beryl. And all the beryls to the left, those 3 Helidors, or one very, very green one, are from this pegmatite. So I follow the mining from the 30-meter level up to the surface here. And here is in the mine, a pocket. And here is also mining pocket. And there are specimens that were for sale at the time. I could only buy one on each visit. And the money wouldn't last for more than that anyway. So here are some of the finest crystals they found in the mines that they still were available. Mersinka, as I said, it started 1668, and they have annual, and I would say there are hundreds of people in the small villages here cutting by hand still, cutting the stones, and they go out and dig tourmalines and beryls and topaz in the wild. They call chytnikids, means tricky people. So the ones working in the mine, they cannot take anything, but they dig their small shafts 10, 20 meters down in small tunnels. And this is a poor old picture, but those I made for the mining company, all the best specimens for them to apply for more money from Moscow. And here is a better photo. It's mostly from the Urals. There's one from Finland. And you can just see the amazing quality. There's some from Transbaikal now, Adonchilon and Shelovagora also. And Bolshovochny. Some pieces were found here 1815. And this was a new find. This was the only, this blue-green in light and blue-blue aquamarine in daylight. So color changing or color shifting. And here's more. So those are all Russian beryls from different deposits. The pure Heliodors are from 6 different mines. And I will show you on map later. Now, this is, of course, the most exquisite color, which is extremely rare to come by. They were all found in 1976. I'll go fast, and here you see the detail. Now, this gift of the sun, it's completely clear, the color, although it's much more common with the yellow-green. The one to the right has been depicted in a very old book as from Mersinka, and now it's in a museum in Beirut, and they have it labeled as from Ilmen. I do not know the reason why. I've never seen anything like that from the Ilmen Mountains, so that's a newer version of the origin. The one to the left is from Alabashka pegmatite field in Mersinka and the British Museum. And here are more of the cut stones. The small green crystal to the left, I would not call a Helidor. It's more an aquamarine or green beryl. And that came to Germany in 1774. So that's one of the oldest documented beautiful gem crystals that have been preserved and not been cut. And of course, tradition was to cut most of the stones. Okay, I'll keep going. That's the biggest crystal found in the Urals in the last decades, and they stopped the mining in 1993. Here is a very old piece from the Urals, beautiful one that was found in Tucson, and then here's a piece of jewelry. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you can find real Helidors from the Urals in old jewelry. I think most of it left Russia in the 1990s when it was complete anarchy and people didn't get their salaries for a year or so. And here is my little son with his favorite Urulga. This was found in 1850s. He would kiss that goodnight every evening when he was a small boy. And here was the finest Heliodor matrix they found in this mine active. And there's an American friend who I had an exhibit in Tucson. He could not believe his eyes. It's the finest one he ever saw in matrix, Ural one. Here is another deposit. You can see to the left here, aquamarine and this orange yellow from the same pegmatite. The one to the right is from yet another place. So in the same place, you can have quite a few. Now the last deposit in Russia is Adonchilon and Shelavagora. If you see the mountain to the left, they're pegmatites. To the right, after following the red line, Shelavagora, that's a grayson. It means it's the same granite intrusion, only to the right, that's the top, the apex of the granite. It means there is grayson, it's porphyritic. It's not granite, porphyritic with thin veins. And here's the cross section to the left, real big pegmatites. They're quite more like a chimney. And to the right is Shelavagora, and the pegmatites are further down. So there's plenty to mine there in the future, but the mines are closed. And here's Adonchilon. Here's Adonchilon, just for you to see the landscape a bit. And here's Shelavagora. So the open pit down there, they mined to recover for industrial purpose, probably beryl and other metals. There are quite a few ore minerals in here. And here's from Shelavagora, so it's grayson. Interesting thing is here that you can find bicolored, half green or green blue and half Heliodor, yellow to deep yellow to really golden in the same. There's one of the few places we can see that in Iveland, Evje, Norway. I found the same, and a few other places. One in Espirito Santo. Here's a large aqua from Shelavagora and the same view. Now you can see I marked Iveland, Evje, Karelia Beryl Mine, Altai. Those are known. Czech Republic in France, northern Portugal, Cairngorms in Scotland. It should be a little further down, but it's colliding the text. And more mountains in Northern Ireland. Those are places where there is Helidor, but the main one here is of course Volodarsk, which is now called Khorol in Ukraine, and in India. India has produced a lot. The red dots in Pakistan, Afghanistan are just to mark pegmatites, but they are too young, as I said. Kyrgyzstan has some aqua Helidors, and Altai there are several. So you need the older. Big question marks on Africa, because those are areas where I would expect they're old enough pegmatites. Many areas have lithium pegmatites. Sudan, southern Egypt have large barrels in pegmatite. Now, I have not seen any high quality Helidors from there. Now, this is more mountains, Northern Ireland. You can see the granite, beautiful mountains, highly recommended. A visit, you cannot find much. But you can see above the guys, there's some small holes in the granite. Those are tiny, tiny cavities and small pegmatites where we did find crystals. So to the left here, they look like a bit grayish, but in fact, they were more yellow Helidor. To the right was aquamarine crystal. And this was only summer 2 years ago. How about that? We found all those crystals. Of course, it's Photoshop. So the crystal I'm holding to the left, that is about 4 centimeters in reality. But we had a few friends who knew we were there. So one of our friends, he made this and we sent it as a fun card. They're beautiful crystals, of course not this size. That would be absolutely amazing. Now we'll go to Finland and I show a few things from Iveland Evje. No, I already showed Iveland Evje. So we will go to Karelia. You can see the granite here is the pink. Here it was like if you take a pancake and stretch it, in the middle becomes thinner. And this granite intrusion, 1.7 billion years old, it is not so eroded, which means the apex of the granite intrusion is in the middle. And most of the best cavity pegmatites we have found in the center, not in the outskirts of the granite. Here is one Karelia Beryl mine. To the left, big barrels. Under them were some small Helidors. Here is digging a big pocket. On top of I have written 4.8 kilo. That's a barrel they just removed. And here it is in situ. This is not all gem quality, but of course you could cut stones. This has been saved in the Museum of Natural History in Luxembourg. 4.8 kilo. That's the largest nice crystal from the mine. And here are the best gem quality. Of course, this quality were only a few crystals. To the left, you see it in matrix, and to the right, one crystal removed from matrix. And the crystal here to the left and right, those are the best of the crystals recovered and preserved also. And you see the spectrum.
Question here, Peter. What is the breakpoint in age? What is the age breakpoint where is likely to find Heliodors in pegmatites and then not?
Well, it depends. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. And I would say the young pegmatites in Pakistan are 1 to 23 million years old. Very, very young. You could imagine that you have a uraninite crystal the size of a fist right next to an aqua. That would make it Helidor colored. But I've never seen that. The same all from Hindu Kush, Karakoram, Himalayas, all the way to Burma and Vietnam. They're maximum 23 million years old. I have heard people say there's some in Vietnam. Could be, but I think I've seen a big lot from Vietnam that were very light colored and irradiated. But these are all natural. And you see the right one, very strong yellow color, that was found inside the biotite in the outskirts of the same pocket of those. And the green one in the middle, you could call this emerald helidors. And why? Because they have 25 to 35% chromium. When you bring them out in the sunlight compared to from Ukraine, they have a much stronger color. So they really have a color from the chromium. Now we come to Ukraine. Here to the left, it's in the outskirts of the granites. So in the middle, there are no pegmatites exposed. They're probably eroded, slightly older, saying 1.7, 1. Almost 1.8. I think 1.763 is the latest age dating. It was developed in Soviet times with 110 kilometers tunnels to mine quartz. So that's what they mine piezo quartz for industrial military purpose. And here's a large topaz. And now we go to the helidors. And most of them are yellowish green to olive green, and a few are much more yellow. But in fact, those are very rare there. And they mine 2.5 tons from the largest pocket, which you see to the left. The right crystal is an unbelievable, flawless, beautiful crystal from a pocket that only produced 3.5 kilo, of which just a handful had the top quality. And here's the one to the left from that same pocket, although it looks completely different from the other. It came from another position in the pocket. And then we have a topaz on the right, where you can see also irradiation has colored the topaz. It's lighter colored in the center. And this is the structure of the granite. So this we found in one of the tunnels. When they mined it in the 70s, they had missed this pegmatite because they were looking for them by drilling. And the structure means here is like a huge football. And we made a tunnel in there, and there is a pegmatite inside. And here is inside one with a quartz roof and large crystal falling down, 1.5 ton crystal, 1.4 meter, smoky quartz left in the pocket. And in this pocket, I was just gathering some small beryls on the floor. They're up to the size of my thumb almost, the biggest one there. But absolutely beautiful quality. From this pocket, we dug and found another pocket they had missed in the old days with Heliodors up to 1.2 kilo and beautiful smoky quartz to 4 tons. Here's another pocket that had been they blasted, so I found a huge section of the Helidor, and I dug for many, many days there to try to find the rest of it. Never found it. But this was the first documentation of Helidor in situ in Ukraine that I took this photo. I used the last of my water bottle to clean off so I could see them and take a photograph. And here the crystal to the left is taken out, the bigger of the two. The one to the right came from the best pocket in another part of the mine. And here you see that huge smoky quartz where I told you we kept digging and found this pocket with the giant smoky quartzes. Here's another pocket, a topaz 29 kilo. That pocket did not have any beryl. And to the left here is a huge topaz, 325 kilo. And to the right, a beautiful Helidor and a cut one. Now the cut one has much stronger color than is visible in this photo. One inside a cast and article in Gemology that we published in 2023. And here's a strong, more olive green in the clay. This means that the granite has been completely eroded and there's 10 to 40 meter overburden clay, where they were digging also mining quartz crystals, and some of the cavities contain beryl. Your miners are happy it's not gem quality, but they're happy to find beryl at all. It only occurs in 2% of the cavities, and they mined 1,900 pockets. Topaz is much more common and occurred in 10%. of pegmatites. Beryl and topaz. And here's part of the giant chamber. These gentlemen, plus 3 other miners, mined 900 kilo Heliodor in 1992 during 5 days from the richest zone. Now that mining company, they gave it to one dealer from Oklahoma to sell in Tucson, and they never saw him ever again and never received a penny. So the mining company went bankrupt for that reason. So the crystal to the right, the miner found in the road. In the large open pit, we saw things from before, and that piece, this is the top part of it. It was broken with a concrete saw into 3 pieces. So the top part is there. To the right is from another beautiful pocket. And here's a cut piece. I think this one should be in the Smithsonian, about 2,000 carats. And here are more. Here's one thing my wife designed for herself. And here you see the aquamarines to the left, natural 2,500 carats, 9,000 carat topaz. Of course, that's impractical to wear in any jewelry, but these are normal size. And you see the color from deep yellow to green. And here is in situ, very rare photo, crystal in situ, and big crystal. And these are all natural colors, no radiation, no heating, nothing. Beryl and topaz from the same mine. Quite fantastic, I must say. So, Hindu Kush, Karakoram, Himalaya, Vietnam, forget about it. India is another story. They're very old pegmatites with beautiful aquamarines to 30 kilo, big Helidors. And now we go to Brazil. Minas Gerais, Espírito Santo, Bahia, and Rio Grande del Norte all have very nice aquamarines and Helidors. There's one aquamarine mine entrance. And sometimes these are the aquas found. And in the mine not far from this comes these Helidors. Absolutely fabulous. The edge one is in the Yale Museum now from the Barry Yampo collection. The left one is from the Jean Myron collection, exhibited in Tucson this year. And this is a rare photo nobody has seen before. That is from find all of them green to green, blue to golden to dark brownish golden, all natural colors, not irradiated. I've been in the cavity. I saw and I collected myself small piece. I saw one big crystal found. That was real Helidor. And they were laying very close to each other, but they were all the same color in one area, and then changing color, and then changing color again. So the pocket was several meters across, and they found a lot. You can see the hammer, trim hammer. Those crystals are very, very large and very valuable. So this photo, when the miner in Brazil finds this, he was not showing anyone because it's a huge danger to be kidnapped or to be robbed or even be murdered. And so this was taken in the 90s, and I got the pic. And it's just showing some different colors from Brazil, the green, then the Helidors from Urals and Ukraine. So I want to thank my friends and my children and my family for always supporting. And we should support the young ones. When my wife saw my son a year, 1 year old, 1 month, exactly the same time I started collect minerals. She thought it must be genetic. I and my son, we had an exhibit in the Luxembourg Museum, and you can see the Helidors from the Urals to the right. There are several specimens that are his in the exhibit. So with this, I want to thank you, and you can have as many questions as you like. And that's a spot where I collected my first pegmatite minerals.
There was some question over the last number of years about the coloration of Helidors being artificially created, and so nobody believed that the Heliodors that we're seeing were naturally colored. Do you have a comment on that?
Oh yes, absolutely. In 1993, there was one American who had been a gem dealer in Bangkok, reportedly, what people told me, and he had done some business that wasn't what the Bangkok dealers thought so fair. So he moved back to the US and changed his name. And in Pakistan, he was said to have bought, I know a lot of Pakistani dealers, all the worst barrels. pale beryls, matrices with no color for very little money. And there was a physicist working at the reactor in California who was doing the treatment in irradiating beryls for the gem industry and for this gentleman probably. And he exhibited at the Executive Inn in Tucson. And I went into his room and I looked and I said, well, what method did you use to radiate them? No, they're not radiated. And I was looking, I said, yes, this is from Shuma Bakur. I could see from which mine even some pieces were. This is from Shuma Bakur. It's a hydrothermal system at 5,000 meter, 4,600, 5,000 meter. I have been in Pakistan. I know this is from Shigar, this is from Braldo Valley. So after half an hour, he gave in and said, oh, yes, I've been radiated. So I got 2 samples. I measured them underground for overnight. In fact, I measured, I think, even 24 hours, where it's a body counter where you measure internal contamination of people. So I worked 25 years as a nuclear inspector. And I measured there, and they had used a linear accelerator. So they hadn't used, you can use neutrons, you can use different energies, but so you couldn't, they were not radioactive, which they often did before with topaz. They became radioactive depending on what elements were contaminating the topaz, and these were bombarded. And then I said to the guy, it would be more plausible if they were from Tajikistan. And what I meant with that, I didn't tell him that there are some pegmatites that are, most pegmatites in Pakistan are 1 to 8 million years old. Towards Tajikistan, they get to 15, 20, 23 million years old. So there would be a bigger chance, but there is none there. I have been there in pegmatites. There's no Helidor there. Next year, they were from Tajikistan, and they invented a name, Zelatoyavada, which is Russian. They have no Russian names in Tajikistan. They have it in the local language in Tajik or in Badakhshani or Nuristani, or so they don't have any Russian names whatsoever. So it was all invented, and if there had been a find in Tajikistan, they would come to Moscow the first thing. And there was no import of any Heliodors from Tajikistan to the US market. There were imports of aquamarine and so on. So of course it was all bogus, and there were people making hundreds of thousands and millions on this. And I think it's unfortunate because I don't want to get involved in anything with this, funny business, but I can see it in Tucson. I asked one guy, I said, can you see those Helidors up there? You think they're real? You could see from 50 meters, 150 feet, that they're not real. They don't have the same color. Now you need to look at the spectrum, but the eye can see that right away. And if they were real and almost the same color, they would be extremely rare, but they made hundreds of kilos and sold of these, which is a pity. Some are greenish yellow, some are very strange color. They do it to kunzites also, which gets a very strange color. There's one mine in Afghanistan with white quartz, color, almost no color, white spodumene. They irradiate and you get a smoky quartz with a yellow and very strange, not lilac, a little strange purplish color kunzite. So it's nothing that I want to touch or even have even comment. I don't want to see these things. I don't want to involve anything like that.
How can we test?
There's no Heliodor.
How can we test, Peter, to find out the real from the fake?
Well, if you ever are offered a Helidor, they're so rare. There's some in Connecticut, some real ones, very, very rare, found in the 50s, 60s, very few crystals. There's some that are going towards Helidor in California also. Green beryls, a little bit Helidor. But this also, most I would call them aquamarines. So you would be very suspected. From Ukraine, you can buy because they found so plenty. From Urals, very difficult. From any other place, very difficult. Not from Vietnam, not from Pakistan, not from Tajikistan. So they're much rarer than aquamarines. So in Ukraine, they found 2.5 tons in the biggest pocket. Some other pockets, hundreds of kilos. In the Urals, it's a matter of the richest pocket, 2 kilos, 1 kilo. That's like several magnitudes less.
A couple of questions that are on chat, Peter. Why have the Euro mines been closed?
Yeah. Well, it's many reasons. In the 90s, the mines closed And that was because it was disaster. Russia has about almost twice as much natural resource as United States. United States is a very wealthy country. It's at the time I mean they were taking care of oil, gas, platinum, gold, very big gold producer, gemstones, they have forests, they have very high education. And it was oligarchs from Russia, from Ukraine, from Europe, from North America who went in and could get stocks in the company. You could buy maybe a mining company for a few sacks of potatoes or something, because they didn't get the salaries. So at that time, the Asian tiger was Thailand. What does Thailand have? They have elevated shrimps and they have tourism. Russia has everything. And even professors at university and researchers didn't get their salary for 8 months, 12 months. So I know one professor of geology, he bought 5 bottles of Coca-Cola. That's what he could afford. He was standing in the street to make 20 cents on a bottle, which is disaster. So I worked as a nuclear inspector. My former director, he took a big part of our budget, which is to safeguard all nuclear material. Many of my colleagues all through the 90s went to Russia with a big sack of money, bills, and paid 30,000 salaries in Russia for them to be able to stay in their post. So they wouldn't bring all their nuclear knowledge somewhere else in the world where we do not want it. No, there are countries who would love to have them coming. So I think it was a very, very smart, real inspector who did that. And that was nobody knew about it in principle, but all the 30,000, 31,000 scientists in Russia in the nuclear field were happy. They could keep their place, they could get some electricity, they could get some heating, they could get their equipment running. And of course, in the geological field, when I was in the Euros 92, and back in 93, and they didn't get the funding was cut from 92 to 93 and a half year. The funding for the mining in Euros was cut. The chief geologist was chief for 300 mines. He had his own cow, his own chicken. This is already in 92. So within a year, he did get salary. They had to send 90% of all the crystals to Moscow. And they funding. So it was really disastrous. They had to close in the end of 93. They had to close the mines because they couldn't pay the salaries. So when I came in 92, I bought 4.8 kilo topaz. I bought some beryl crystals. I bought everything, amethyst, whatever I could for my own collection. And when I came back in January 93, the chief geologist met me in Katzenberg, which is only a couple of hours drive from the mines. In winter, it takes a bit more longer because we had to drive through the forest in the snow. And his first note to me was, "How do you dare to come back?" I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, the whole mining village of 4,000 people know you were the first foreigner ever to set your foot there. And suddenly, when you appeared, they got their salary from the money I brought and bought the mineral. So everybody knew that I was the person." And it was not many nights staying there. I was there for almost 2 weeks. After only a few nights, 3 big miners tried to break into the place I was staying. The last house in that village that belonged to the mining company, nobody would hear me screaming or shooting or anything. And they were trying to get in, and I managed to scare them off by pretending to be several persons. I was shouting and slamming doors in different voices, and I had made a trap. So it was economics. The emerald mines closed down. One Israel company went in there, then one Canadian company. Canadian company started mining, but in Russia, if you say we're going to mine emeralds, you can only mine emeralds. So you say we're going to mine these 105 minerals that is found in this mine, then you can mine them all. But they mined emeralds and they mined alexandrite and phenakite. And you cannot do that. They could have just asked me one phone call. I could tell them you need to have the mining rights for all the minerals, not just not the emerald. If you want to mine alexandrite, you cannot just claim for emerald. Then you'll be put in jail. So they were lucky. They invested a few $1 million. That mine is up running again. So some of the mines the last 20 years have started. The problem with the pegmatite is that it's like almost like a natural preserve. So even the mining company, Makrusha and Golodne, are two veins next to each other, were probably the same vein offset by a fault. And they named it Mogul. So they didn't even tell to Moscow that it came from Makrusha and Golodne. They called the mine Mogul. So they were covering, otherwise they probably wouldn't be allowed to work there. And I would say Makrusha is the first place where fabulous blue topaz was found. Unbelievable. Beautiful crystals, beautiful gems, and also Heliodor. And they had mined only 10-15% of the vein. So you could open and mine, but you need to build a road there. There are bears living there. So it's quite wild now since the 90s. It's completely wild. Lots of wolves in the area. I was there last time 2 years ago.
So you're saying bureaucracy and finances are the end of the mines and heroes. Another question was,
Yeah.
you made a
Yes.
suggestion that there were over 100,000 documented pegmatites on the China side. So the question is, does that mean that there are an awful
Yes.
lot of material that has yet to be mined?
Oh, plenty of pegmatites there. The Koktokai number 3, the Chinese mine in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And because that pegmatite was so rich in cesium, rubidium, beryllium, tantalum, niobium, so it was like a major revenue at the time for the Chinese government. One of the most, or if not the most important mine in China was top secret, that pegmatite. Nowadays it's closed. There's still some there, and now it's not important financially. The same with the gem pegmatites. You need to invest quite a lot, and you don't know what you will get. Now, the pegmatites in the Urals, they're quite predictable by drilling. You can see from the structure, I would say, the chance of having pockets. And from drilling the vein at different levels and along the length, you can see that the central portion may have one or two sections down to 30, 40, 50 meter that will yield pocket. You cannot tell how many will have beryl and topaz and so on, or how beautiful specimens, but that you can predict.
So
But it's different from each pegmatite field. You don't look at this.
Andy asked the question is how easy or difficult is it to separate crystals from the pegmatite matrix without fracturing or damaging them? And is this process chemical or mechanical?
Yeah, it's pure. You mine the pegmatite. So the best method is that you mine a shaft down and you mine a tunnel all along the pegmatite, and you will discover pockets. When you're coming close to a pocket, you should not drill and blast. You need to work by hand, and it's only by manual that you take out the specimen. So if you have a beautiful specimen like you saw the one on the smoky quartz, the value is about 100-fold if it's on the matrix. It's so much rarer. So it's all done but manually digging the pockets. Now, sometimes by accident, they blast into a pocket. But the Cassionis mine, which I followed, you mine it from the 30-meter level, and they take small sections in the roof, little by little. So you discover you just mine half a meter tall and 1 meter length, half a meter length. If you don't need to mine it from below, but if you do that, you can let the rocks lay. And there was another cross section at 20 meter, and you don't have to bring out so much. You only bring out the gem material. And if it's more flat laying vein, you can mine, start in one, and you go the same 1 meter at a time, but then you're standing on the pegmatite. And there it's even easier. You just break it up in small sections, and you break it in small and small, and you can get 90% of all the gem crystals without damaging them if you do it the right way. And
So
then
the
your
answer
yield
is
is
by
much more.
hand.
I've seen, yeah, by hand, for sure, by hand. No mechanics, then you're destroying everything.
The final question, Peter, is there a geological explanation for the Ukraine mines producing such a large amount of Helidor compared to most other localities?
Yes, I can. And as I said, there were only 2%, but there were many pegmatites that produced 200, 600 kilo, 2.5 tons. So in this huge granite intrusion, the solutions, they gathered the smallest element, lithium, beryllium, and so on. In this case, mostly beryllium, fluorine, also for topaz on. they gathered in the roof of this big intrusion and on the sides. The roof portion is eroded away. This is gone. So you'll have to dig in the fields, maybe moved by ice ages and so on. So, I mean, because it's so long ago, 1.7 billion years ago. However, the granite that's still there, which is not kaolin, so weather kaolin, on the top you just dig. And the reason why there's so much, of course, original, they had a bit of beryllium in the granite, but it's separated very, very well. So it's not just a little beryl here and there, but the beryl separated and was enriched in final solution, and it's like a huge bubble. Normally pegmatites, they will make fissures in surrounding rocks or in the mother granite, and they will fill fissures. You will have long veins, and there could be pockets up to hundreds of pockets, like you saw in Euro small vein, 338 pockets, the cross section. But here instead, you got huge bubbles, 5 meter to 50-meter diameter, and even bigger. Some pegmatites are 100-meter diameter. And in this bubble, even if you're inside where there's 2.5-ton beryl, because the cavity is so big, the beryl is concentrated in some areas, like this 900 kilo they dug in 5 days. But in that pocket, there are beryls almost everywhere. But the big concentration were in a few spots. So I hope that helps you. And then some other, there would just maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beryls. But most of those cavities in Ukraine were quite rich.
So there was another question come up. I know when you mentioned the moorns in Northern
Yes.
Ireland, you said they were very tiny pockets, but the question was, what does it
Yes.
actually look like? And when you're there, are you the boss? Do you bring equipment and a team, or just a bunch of friends? And or is it alongside other mining activities that you're looking at data from, and you're extrapolating from that, where to find the barrels?
Oh, there is no mining activity there. There, one friend, he has been there many, many, many times. He's a rock climber and mountaineer, and he worked and nearby, so he had been there many times. And I want to go for a very long time. And I was giving talks at the Scottish Gemological Conference. Yeah, that was last summer, and I visited my daughter, and I decided those guys from Czech Republic were going to have a look, and I had for several years studied the geology. There are several different pulses of granite intrusions. I have studied the geochemistry of the intrusions, everything that was published. I looked by satellite. I looked where I thought they would be. I looked from pictures that I could find. People had published pictures from the different mountains where they had reported different things. And we went, and there were just tiny, few centimeter pockets with some blue aquamarines in the boulders. On the way, I flew to Northern Ireland. I bought a tent, a sleeping bag. It was, just bought everything there, and I just bought a few avocados. Uh, Up on the mount, the water is clear. And yeah, I brought a couple of lemons, couple of avocado, not much food. And I was there camping and looking around a couple of different mountains. Uh, it's quite tough terrain. So you need to be used to walk on mountain. You need to climb. So uh, the first mountain had been heavily picked over, very, very heavily. People through 150 years have been there. And then we went to a second place where there was a thin Grayson vein that one British collector had found by chance on a completely different mountain. And my Czech friend, he had dug a huge open pit on that mountain, just dug. And there was a thin vein of Grayson where I showed you the photo, a sample of Helidor I collected there. There were some small aquamarines. And then they went on to another mountain when I had to go home, and I dropped them off by this mountain. I had a rental car, they didn't. And they found this aquamarines to 4 centimeter. So, of course, they knew when he had been there, I think, more than a dozen times, several days each time. So you need to know exactly by the meter where to look. And even if you come to the right spot, you need to understand we found the right spot and we dug, but it had already been dug maybe a century ago. So I could see that this was a super spot, but everything gone.
Well, obviously, Peter, you have a
So it
tremendous
takes a
amount
lot
of
of
knowledge,
preparation.
have a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge, and thank you so much for sharing it. Thank you all for actually attending and giving us your time and attention. I thought this was very interesting. I think the most important parts, at least to me anyway, were the trying to understand, the fakery that had been going on using irradiation to change the color. So I really appreciate you spending some time tonight with us from your holiday home, and we'll look forward to some future programs. I will mention that in July we have a commitment to a talk on the ethics of buying gems, like doing ethical gem buying and how to do it. And I think in this world of strife and difficulties in so many of the mining areas of the world, it's important perhaps for many of us to have that ability to determine where and how we can get ethically sourced gems. So that's one for sure topic we're going to have in a few months, and I'll have more up send out to you in the next invitations. So thank you for staying, thank you for listening and watching, and thank you, Peter, so much for spending some time with us tonight. And I hope you all have a great spring and
Invitation
oncoming summer, and
for the
hopefully
guest.
our programming will be of interest to you in the months to come. Thank you also, Clemens, for helping us with
Thank you
the
very much.
technical. Are you there? There you are. So have a good night, all, and we'll end the recording.
Thank you very much. All the best. Have a wonderful summer.